This is Amy Sermon with Max Knowledge, and I'm here today with David Vaillancourt, Online Director of Education with Ultimate Medical Academy. David, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we're going to be talking a bit today about online programs in allied health education, and specifically some of the emerging technologies that support success in those programs. And David, you've got a really strong background in online education. Can you tell us a little bit about it as it relates to our topic?
Sure. I began my career in education about 25 years ago as a K-12 science teacher, chemistry, physics, biology, and some computer technology. Moved into the post-secondary arena in '97, teaching Cisco, Novell, Microsoft Network Engineering. And so my love has always been in the areas of technology and education. And in 2004, I completed my doctorate in instructional technology and distance education, and got an opportunity to establish a national forum for elementary school kids called the National Math Bee in 2006. And since 2008, I've been researching engagement metrics in the online arena. And these engagement metrics are all about improving student performance through predictive analysis. And so one of those areas, of course, will be very helpful to our students, not just in the medical arena or the allied healthcare field, but all across the online platforms in many different content areas.
Very good. Well, David, first question, can you tell us a little bit about the benefits of online education?
Yes, the benefits are emerging right now. They are growing. And looking at a study that was done, it was a meta-analysis of research over the past decade that was conducted by the Department of Education. They wanted to find out what the best practices are and what the benefits and most likely ways to derive those benefits from online education might be. In the study, it did identify that seemed to be a slight improvement of student performance when online education was used. More particularly, the highest improvement or performance levels came from students who were engaged in the hybrid model, which is a blend of the face-to-face and the online. And the online has made specific benefits that it can add to that face-to-face, and even benefits that are standalone without the face-to-face. Some of those are an individualization possibility for students in very large numbers. For instance, in a face-to-face classroom, you often have, 20, 30 students, and sometimes more, depending on your school and their setup.
Sure.
But in the online situation, you have the opportunity to speak with individually the students, identify metrics individually about the student's performance, and the feedback is much more specific to the individual student, and that happens on a very large scale. Some other benefits are the synchronous, asynchronous nature of online learning. It's, I guess you could call it resource flexibility in space and time. You have the opportunity to share the knowledge or share dialogue with students without the impingement of being at the same place at the same time as a requirement. A lot of times, through discussion boards, through learning activities that provide that asynchronous interaction, the student and the teacher's schedules may not align, but they're uninterrupted in the fashion that the student and the instructor can approach those when they're available, not necessarily when availability is simultaneous between the two. So oftentimes that allows for progress at a faster rate. There are a couple of other advantages that I would like to briefly mention. Technology.
Sure. Yes, please.
Okay. Technology leveraging would include things like objective and accurate tracking of data, not just of the student's performance, but even of the student's activities within the learning environment, to identify learner activities that are much more conducive to success, while many of those might be as we would say, common sense, there are sometimes insights gained by analyzing what learners are doing, and even the sequence, frequency, the duration of those activities being analyzed to help coach or to help advise students how to best utilize that learning environment for themselves. And using those statistics and that data to do the predictive analysis so that we can intervene at a much earlier stage, and we're not coming back and saying you should have done this, you should have done that, but we can give more proactive direction for the students and allow them to be successful at a much earlier state.
David, I know you've got a couple more. I just want to mention what seems really interesting to me is that, so many people are aware of the ability to, for the time saving factor and the space saving factor, but there really are, it sounds like so many more true advantages to online learning. It's very interesting.
We are just, as they say, seeing the tip of the iceberg. Online learning is in its infancy. As we move forward and moving on into those emerging technologies we were talking about, I want to emphasize the term, or that adjective, emerging, because online learning is growing by leaps and bounds. We have the ability to do the analytics and collect the metrics that I identified a few moments ago, but intertwining different types of curriculum within one another sometimes becomes very efficient with the technology. For instance, within our particular curriculum, we're training healthcare professionals, and at the same time, a lot of these individuals within our demographics need life and professional skills to be taught. And based on these scenario simulations that we can provide, we not only provide the technical content, but we can also interweave that with the professional skills and the life skills that they need to not just survive but thrive in a professional environment, something where they have the opportunity to interact before. So those technologies, again, are in their infancy, but they are emerging, and we do have access to many scenario-based simulations and the interweaving of the content plus professional skills that will be required simultaneously from the student as they interact in their new career environment.
So moving into the emerging technologies piece of it, we'd love to hear more technologies that you're using at Ultimate and others that you'd like to share.
Okay, I'd like to start out with this by asking everybody to kind of open up their imagination. For instance, and I think I give this analogy quite often, but it's not too far-fetched. Think of an online physical education course. Now, a lot of people 10 years ago would have looked at that and said, that's the silliest thing they've ever heard of.
Very true.
But if you take a look at the Wii technology that people play golf and tennis and do exercises, now if you think of an application being written where monitors of heart rate and body temperature, respiration, all of those things could be monitored and plugged into a USB port collected by the application. In fact, you may even have a more efficient, if you will, maybe that might not be the right word, but efficient PE course, because the monitoring of what the student is actually doing and the benefit the student is gaining can be much more, again, individualized.
Individualized,
accurate.
Yeah.
And the accuracy and individualization that online learning and the technology leveraging that is going to occur over the next decade or two is going to be amazing as far as enhancing that educational experience, possibly allowing it to be much more efficient by eliminating those things that the student has already attained proficiency and moving right on to and keeping on track with the gaining of proficiencies that are required as they move forward. So the technology, as it's calibrated to the individual learner, will provide a more interesting and efficient learning forum for each learner. But it can be done on a huge volume scale just because of the leveraging of technology. We also have...
Absolutely. It's incredibly interesting. Please, go ahead.
Well, we also have laboratory simulations. For those who are listening right now, if you've not heard of Second Life, it's basically the avatar virtual world that you can go into, and many schools, many universities are setting up and establishing activities within Second Life. And it provides everything from a walk down the hall to sitting in the classroom and watching the teacher lecture, just like you would in real life, to chemistry labs, for instance, where you can mix things that blow up and you get a chance to see it blow up and nobody gets hurt and there's no damage to pay for. So these laboratory simulations are very important. There's also things called hybrid laboratory setups. And what that does is it provides, for instance, the learner at home can receive a kit with all of the supplies that are required to conduct the lab experiments. But then in the online environment are the laboratory questionnaires, the directions on how to conduct it, even AV files that demonstrate what need to be done so that the student can go over it at their own pace, again individualized, at their own pace as many times as they need to so they can get the activity right and attain the learning objective, which is also monitored by the technology. So there are a lot of things that are coming out, and the last one I'll mention because there are many more, but exam proctoring. One of the questions that a lot of people have is, well, how do you know it's that person who signed up for the class
Absolutely.
and is taking the test? And there are, for a very small fee, relatively speaking, $150, which could be added to the entire book cost of a program, would just be like the cost of another book or two. But it's a 360-degree camera. It is locked into the computer through an application that locks the computer down. You can't go out to the internet. There's an audio microphone there so that they can see everything and hear everything that's in the room with the student and the computer, and the computer can be locked down so that the student can't access the internet or any other papers or anything like that. And so the test is totally secured and proctored in a real-time fashion. Again, this proctoring is recorded for future reference if needed, but it's often archived and not used if there doesn't seem to be any difficulty. But there are a lot of things that are coming out that will make online learning not just as good as face-to-face, but in some ways it will provide superior access for students and assessment processes for teachers.
David, just fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. I know you could talk for much longer, and our interviews are short, but we really appreciate you taking the time to share just some thoughts and some of those emerging technologies. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.